Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream scene. I'm running production today, so apologies. I think it's working though. I think we're live here on Streamer Square. We have an awesome philosophical episode for you guys today. We're gonna be talking about success, what it means, what it takes, how to get there. For all those that have been asking how to be a successful streamer, this is the show for you. And before we introduce our hosts, or our guests, I'm going to introduce my lovely co-host, Hunter. How's it going, Hunter?
All I get is a lovely, and I have 18 adjectives for you
I'm trying to
every
bring
time.
you down to the one adjective per show.
Leading by example. I like this. I approve. That's good leadership. I am, as of today, the Hunter Wild. I've been spending so much time outside. For the first time in years, my nerd noodles actually present a bit of a watch tan. I'm getting vitamin D.
Wow.
So much walking around, and I feel so liberated by it. It's so nice.
Sunlight's
and it gets
not that
creative
bad.
juices flowing. What's that?
I said sunlight's not that bad, you know?
Well, it depends on how pasty you are.
It's a commodity here in the streamer world, though.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go to, okay, we're not on the show to the topic of the show. This subject is my absolute jam. And I think that I am met in equal and possibly greater parts by our guests today. Guests, let me get the T in there. Our guests today, Stephen Spohn and Danotage, two fundamentally brilliant human beings that we're all lucky to have in this, not only on the show today, but in the space in general. Guiding lights, in my opinion. And this is not just sweet talking it up. Like, this is legitimate perspective.
We already said yes. We're already here.
I know.
You trying to sell it?
Yeah. If you two wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, Steve, we'll start with you. Who are you in this space, and as yourself, as your own man?
Very deep, so a philosophical question. Well, there was a rainy day in 1980 that, So I am a streamer on Twitch. I actually just got an exclusivity deal where I'm on Twitch all the time now.
Nice.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But my primary responsibility in life is trying to help people, guide them to being a bigger, better version of themselves. My way of doing that is by doing YouTube videos and sort of prattling on about things I've learned along the way and how much I've effed up as well. That's the philosophical point: the good, the bad, and the ugly. I also, you may know me from Able Gamers, the charity that helps people with disabilities be able to play video games.
Very nice. Laudable every time you go down that list. Dan, what about you?
I'm Dan. I'm Danotage. We've been streaming on Twitch for about it just hit over like 5 years, I think now. Maybe 6. I don't remember, honestly. But always the entire time I've been a streamer that talks about philosophy and talks about the fact that most of what we do is purely theory, and there's always a philosophical discussion. I can say the word probably about what it is that we do every day. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a big reason that like Hunter and I became friends was there's always something to talk about, and that's pretty much what I do on a daily basis, both here on Streamer Square on Tuesdays and here and my own channel at Danotage everywhere.
What time is that show here on Twitch.tv/Streamer Square?
Bad question to ask right now.
It's on Tuesdays.
It might be changing, but tomorrow, Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, Dan's Stream of Thought, there's a good chance we'll be continuing this conversation tomorrow.
Heck yeah.
Excellent.
Are we plugging things right now? Hold on.
Perfect. Why didn't you have that up at the beginning?
Please, go ahead.
So good.
So
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
when we start these shows, I always like to start with the basics of defining success, right?
Yes.
That's the whole show. So let's just start with just like what does success mean? Like how do you feel successful as a person or as a streamer?
That's not a basic question, I think.
Yeah,
No,
actually,
this whole show is not gonna be basic, but
No.
try to
No,
narrow
this-
it down a little bit.
Basic
This is
question,
a-
no basic answers.
17-hour stream.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
success is 100% defined to the individual and not by societal expectations. There will always be outside pressures to make you conform to what someone else's vision of success is. However, you will find that if you are able to meet the moving goalposts of success as defined by an outside entity, you will never be happy because it is not your own definition. And that's it for me. Take care, everybody. Bye.
That was
Nailed
pretty
it.
good.
You fulfilled the obligations of the
All
guest.
right. All right. Take care.
Yeah,
All right.
that's the show right there.
To start putting like my thoughts together, I started to actually let's start from like the most basic thing we can do, which is, hey, let's look up in a dictionary what it means, what is success and what does successful mean. Is that it came down to very very simple. It is the completion of something. It's to turn out well, to attain a desired object or end, or favorable in desired outcome, which really all three of those definitions are very different. But the one thing I got from that theme was it's such a basic definition that I think inherently as thoughtful humans, we question exactly what that means constantly, because it's just too simple to really say, well, then why is everybody so worried about success if it's that simple of an answer? So I think the nuance of asking that question is really what starts to define success, and the fact that everybody puts their own definition past it because they feel they're needed to, considering it's so simple, that we start to ask the question, well, what is my success? Is it just getting a task done? That doesn't satisfy, I think, most people.
So it seems like success is predominantly tied up in the goals you set. What is the goal that will make you feel successful, and what is the path along the way to get you there?
Which I think could be reframed as, what is the purpose? And this can be broad, super broad and meta, and it can be hyper specific. Like, what's the purpose of this one individual little task that I'm doing? What defines that as successful? Success requires some amount of definition. You have achieved things, which means that you have to know what the things are to be achieved in order to have a definition for what success is for that thing. Very broadly, you have that for like my identity as a whole, right? Like any individual person's process and progress through life. Are you adhering to, some far off vision, goal thing for what you want your life to become? And success can be defined by proceeding toward that in a systematic or otherwise way, but some way that's measurable, where without a doubt that you've achieved things that get you toward that goal. And I think it's definitely goal and purpose driven by nature.
I agree. So I'll give you my favorite quote about this exact subject is actually from Peter Dinklage, who said during a commencement speech, "Do not look for the moments that define you. The moments that define you have already happened, and they will again." And the philosophy behind that is that you will always have another thing that you want to do. There will always be another thing. As soon as you achieve your success, as soon as you reach that definition, immediately your brain starts working on what's next. And because of that, we always have to be mindful that success must be a definition that we ourselves are happy with.
So there's no end point then. There's not like you hit a point and you're like, I'm successful. You're just kind of always progressing towards being more successful, I guess.
Yeah, it's on a continuum.
Well, so as we think about it philosophically, yes. But again, I reel it back to So a lot of these, what you guys are going to hear from everybody is the philosophy behind a lot of these things. The reason that I'm always been interested in philosophy is because I focused on, and this is why, like, you know, Katie, my girlfriend, and I talk about this. She's the philosophy person. I'm the communication person. We talk about how that philosophy is communicated to the world, and that quote from Peter Dinklage is a very important piece on both aspects. He talked about his in that singular quote, he talked about what his philosophy was upon the universe and the world, but he also communicated something that said that without having to say that. One thing that Hunter brought up was a key word that we talk about communication often, which is identity. Identity, and how we communicate that identity, even through death, is we develop something that has already happened, right? We talk about not what's going to happen. We talk about what has happened, but we talk about that within a future sense of what's going to happen.
It's going to have happened.
Going to have happened, yes. Right? Because you talk about, hey, what are my goals? What are my goals? My goals are to get 1,000 followers. Well, what you just said was, I thought about when I get 1,000 followers. I thought about when I reach this goal and I do get 1,000 followers, this is what I'm going to feel, and this is how I'm going to define success, is thus hitting said goal. Instead of communicating, well, in order to reach success, I need to hit that 1,000 followers. So those goals sort of, they're made and they're communicated as if they're in the future, but in reality, you're thinking about it in kind of the past. And it's like, yeah, exactly. Say it again, Hunter.
What will have happened.
Yes, right. That.
Like imaginatively putting yourself in a future time, and then in that future time, in this imaginative realm, looking back at the past that will have existed at that point, which is to your today self, your future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's all, that actually fits in really well with a lot of the conversation I want to have about goal stuff. It's like that imaginative kind of power of foreseeing the places that you want to get to and what it takes to drive toward that.
Well, it's why you cannot trust your future self. This is what they say. That's what people tell each other. And it usually comes down to, well, I'm going to clean the kitchen later. When really you need to do it now, because if you don't, you'll get lazy or whatever it might be. But in the reality, what you're doing is you've made the goal of something that you wanted to do in the past. So you needed to be able to say, hey, this is what needs to happen now, because I am not trusting my future self, because my future self is actually really my past self. And if I don't get that success now, then I will never get that success, even if I were to do the task in the future.
Yeah, are you guys keeping up? Are you guys, you know the conversation?
I can drill that down even further. The number of times that I have said I hate Past Steve is incalculable. I have multiple times in my life have I been like, man, I hate Past me. Gosh darn it. And it's because there's so many times in life where you're like, I will do that later. I will get to that when it's a better time. The time is not right now, but I will do that. And then it gets to be later. And then you have a deadline that you knew 6 months ago that you're like, I'll get there. And it's 3 hours before the deadline. And you're like, man, Past me is a jerk. And then when it happens again, you'll be like, that's future Steve's problem.
Yeah,
damn it.
I know.
Precisely.
See, I feel like future me has gotten through to past me, especially with eating, because I always make sure to leave myself enough that I know that future me will be satisfied. Like if I can't eat the whole thing, I leave enough. I know when I come back to it, I'm gonna be like, thank God for past me, because otherwise you're gonna hate past me.
I mean, this ties in incredibly well overall to the theme. I think what's something that's incredibly productive, and this is kind of just reframing the nature of goals. What's incredibly productive is projecting yourself into the future and asking, what would future me wish that current me did, had already achieved. And looking back at we have this glorious capacity to do this, yet a remarkable failure as humans to learn from our mistakes and go like, what are the things that I have done that have caused defeat that have caused me to resent my past actions? And how can I project myself into the future and figure out what the future me that is unavoidable? That future me is coming down the pipe no matter what. That future me is going to be there. And he's really judgy.
Yeah.
What is that future me? What's the perspective going to be on my now current actions? And how can I structure things to make for that better future life? Because I'm going to be living it regardless. I have choice in this. And so this kind of gets into the vision, mission, and goals stuff. I want to talk about the ambiguity. You were talking about growth. Both Loco and Dan, I think you both mentioned something about growth and perpetual growth. So I have something written down for the notes for today. Ambiguous perpetual growth is a damaging perspective, in part because you literally can't achieve it. So it creates a guaranteed failure and disappointment. How much growth is enough? And how does an individual figure out what a satisfactory level is to hit within any kind of framework with metrics, viewership, earning, whatever that perpetual growth is? How do we engage in this process of refining and defining our goals?
Can I answer your question with a quick question about what we talked about earlier?
Wouldn't be philosophical if you didn't.
When did you decide that piece behind you was done?
When I was tired of doing it.
I think that partially answers the question, though.
The hardest lesson in life to learn is that you will die with things unfinished.
Oh,
That is That is the hardest realization that we as humans have to come to. And the faster you can get to that realization, that there will be things that you have left undone and things that you could have kept doing and things that you should have kept doing. And knowing that you made the decision when the time came that the thing was good enough to move on to the next thing. That good enough is the enemy of the perfect.
Yeah.
Every single one of my books ends that way, by the way. Every single one.
I actually wrote all your books, by the way. So
you've shared that perspective in a really interesting way. Well, your perspective is really interesting. Something that you've shared on our shows in the past is your perception of what I always consider to be like the expiration date on a person, right? This moment of death, that because of the ailment that you have, that has been foisted upon you in life, you see that marker showing up a lot faster than other people's perceptions tend to, right? We tend to think of it as this very far off and distant thing, and it's perpetual. And I think this is why it's such a struggle to look at how many things will be left undone, and does that make my life, does it make it less valuable? But you've been talking about all of these processes in your thought and your action and your goal setting that has been really finely tuned because of this perception that you have. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I have said multiple times, and probably the reason I keep getting invited back is that I very much view that we all have an invisible clock above our heads, and it has a time. And that time changes based on the decisions we make when that expiry clock is going to run out. Dan and I both have to have 5 words that we can't say today. That's too me. And my viewpoint on life is this. For those of you who don't know me, I have 2 terminal illnesses, not 1, but 2. And chances are that neither of them is going to get me, something else will, because of the law of averages. However, I know that life is like this, right? So imagine your life is like this. You're standing on an open field, and Dan and Loco and Hunter and I are all standing, are social distancing 6 feet apart, and in front of us there is a giant fog, and somewhere in that fog is a brick wall. And when we hit that brick wall, we're done. We're not going to go any more further. We can't see into the fog. We have no idea where the wall is. We know it's in there. We don't know where. And I don't know where Loco's is. I know where Dan's is. And Hunter's is over there somewhere, but I don't know where. I know mine is coming up probably statistically closer than any of the 3 of theirs. So from a bird's eye view, I can pull the camera up above myself and I can see that where my fog ends is closer to me than theirs is to theirs in all probability. So I know that the amount of field I have left to traverse and get all the things I want to not leave left undone, I know that that's shorter. And that gives me an extreme advantage because most people do not want to think about their mortality. They don't want to think about that brick wall in the fog. They think it's forever, and it's not. And the one advantage that my life has given me, well, I've gotten a couple, but the biggest one is that I have the presence of mind to know that it's there. And some people don't necessarily want to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so fascinating. So how do we use this to shape our perspective on success and goal setting?
Well, I mean, I've come to the realization a long time ago that I'm not going to stream forever. I'm not even probably going to stream into through into my 40s. So
I will
it has,
because that's just 2 years off.
well, it's
next
turned into how do I define what my legacy will be here on content creation platforms all across.
Mm-hmm.
Something that will outlive you.
Right, exactly. Because while I don't think I'm going to just stop streaming, I do think that I'm going to stop showing up live. But how do you exist? How do you communicate your past into future brains? Past, future. Sorry, guys, I apologize. But that is pretty much what it is. How do you develop your legacy? Big part of my career, even though I don't get a whole lot of people to watch these shows, but the Stream of Thought show that we do every week here on this channel is a big part of that legacy. The books I write on Twitch, big part of that legacy. If I start to think about it and say, hey, well, nobody's done this. This is a market untapped. And I simply do it for that reason to say, hey, we're going to sell this many books because nobody's doing this. Nobody wants to do this. So it feels like it's an easy thing. Well, then I start to develop a legacy of that, trying to hit a market that doesn't exist, when rather I'd like to develop a legacy that says, well, whether that brick wall shows up here or there or whenever, at least I've done something that will get tossed over the brick wall. It may not be me that gets tossed over the brick wall, but what I have in my hand might.
This metaphor is getting better. We're still using it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a great metaphor, and I love what you're saying there. However, like we were talking about before stream. However, counterpoint is I have some arguments with the modern philosophy on legacy in that I think it's a dangerous game. I think it's a bit of Russian roulette. I do. I think that the legacy is a bit of a misnomer in thinking that in order to have had a purpose for your existence, you must do something on a grand enough scale that you move the needle. And my problem with that is that I believe that everyone changes the world. We just don't see the way the world changes. So it's a bit of an extrapolation, but for those of you who are familiar with the butterfly effect, it wasn't just a horrible Ashton Kutcher movie. It's an actual philosophy. Yep, it was bad. But everything that you do has a long streaming effect. So you deciding not to go to a stream one day will make a difference in someone else's life. You may have given them the laugh they needed. You may have been there when they needed someone, a familiar face to see. You may have been there when someone just needed something to relax and watch. And you not being there that day meant that you weren't there for that person, and you will never know that that happened. Conversely, the day you decided to stream, even though you guys didn't want to, you were there for that person who got one laugh because they had 5 minutes to tune into your stream and they left. They never said hello. They lurked. You didn't even know that they existed. Maybe they didn't even follow your channel, but you made them smile, and that gave them enough energy to go grab their medicine for their grandmother or go to work and fill out an application for a car loan for someone. You don't know how you're changing the world every single day.
So how do you exist with that feeling of doing more? You know, especially as a content creator, where I think we have that pressure of always having to do everything and consistently trying to push yourself and innovate. Like, how do you cope with that weight?
Right. So I've had this conversation about, I don't know, probably 13, 14 times in my life. And in each one has brought me to a further and further conclusion on what it is. How do I decide how to act? And it started off in that sense, that dangerous world where a lot of people do. I've seen it in chat a couple times now. I'm always thinking about what my legacy will be. But the more and more I start to think about how to develop a legacy, it more becomes, well, what is the attitude that I put myself into to then develop any legacy that exists around whatever might happen? Because we don't know. We absolutely do not know. So that has taught me more about when people just say, hey, why don't you just live in the moment? It's like, well, that's not as simple. And you put a forehead next to that. It's not as simple as just doing that. But thinking about legacy and thinking about where things come in the future, it has turned into that. Well, my legacy, whatever that might be, I know that I'll be comfortable with it if I live in every single moment. So if I'm sitting on stream, if I'm sitting in someone's stream, if I'm watching a video of a past stream or whatever it might be, what is it that I'm thinking about within every single moment? Am I thinking about, oh, hey, I could be doing that on my stream. Why don't I go do that? Or am I thinking about, I'm really enjoying what's happening right here, right now, and I'm going to either show that by either chatting, or I'm going to show that by just thinking to myself, I really enjoy this. That way, the next time I see them, I have this thought that's through my head. Is the one time that I remember watching this one stream, developed a memory, it stuck there and said, hey, I remember that stream you did about A, B, and C. They may not remember it because it may be something that they do millions of times, but that story develops a thought, and that story develops kind of their legacy within me, because I think legacy is not one thing. Legacy, like success, is lived in and developed by every individual person that your life touches or doesn't touch. So like what was just talked about before. So thinking about legacy has turned it into, if I can live in every single moment in time that I possibly can without worrying about the things outside of it, I stay way more calm. I am no longer a crazy human being that freaks out about every little thing, even though I used to. But also, I get to pay attention to what's right in front of me and get to appreciate that. That's just sort of what's developed. It's not something that everybody has to do or everything does, but that's something that's developed for me by thinking in that light.
I think legacy can also be like a mode of being,
Mm-hmm.
like never having written anything down, never, crafted some grand project that outlives the life. The way that life is lived with other people, and I think this is key for content creators, the way life is lived with other people, we're co-creating the experience together. And by virtue of that, we're co-creating our futures collectively and our identities, because that's all kind of constantly in process. And the effect that your choices and your kind of configuration, your vision, your mission, your pursuit of goals, who it is that you are while you're doing that stuff, can be a really amazing legacy that I think goes hand in hand with content creation, especially community-oriented streamers, which is pretty much everybody's elevator pitch for their own streams. That allows for a legacy to exist by virtue of our identities living on in other people's hearts and minds.
Mm-hmm. So here's my challenge to the original thing. I think we think about it wrong. I think it's not about legacy. It's about legacies. I think that we have multiple legacies that we leave behind.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are two very distinct and separate philosophies / ideals that I draw from for this conclusion. One is the empty office philosophy. If you've never heard of this, there is a philosophy that if you go onto the edge of a city and you look back to the skyscrapers and you look at every single office building that has a light in it, there is a moment in time where your brain realizes that every single point of light in every single skyscraper is representative of a life and somebody who lives it, and an entire person's identity comes from that one point of light, and that they all exist and simultaneously don't, because you might never run into them and they may never make an impact. Yep. And they might never get impacted by them personally, but somebody that you love might. So they exist and they don't exist at the same exact time. At the same time, if we think of life as multiple legacies, it allows you to be happy with something that you've done. For example, something I've told Loco and Hunter extensively, Able Gamers, my charity, is a big part of my legacy. I will be remembered alongside able gamers for the good, the bad, the worse. It doesn't matter. I will be remembered with able gamers. Is it the only thing that I want to be remembered for? No, it's not. I have ideas and I have things that go around, outside of, and beyond able gamers. And I struggle with that part of my identity every single day because I already have, arguably, the biggest impact that I'm ever personally going to do. It's going to be hard to top an organization that changed a multi-billion-dollar industry. How do I top that? I don't. I put it in its own box. Able Gamers is really cool. I'm glad I was able to be a part of that. I'm also going to go help some people over here, too, because I want to do that as well. And when on my deathbed, I hope that I can remember that I was able to create multiple legacies. And I hope that future Steve will be happy with that.
Huh.
It's weird that I have a constant fear that my legacy will just be my mustache, and I'm just like, okay, everything else I tried just went away.
Not the worst.
Because that's, I mean, like, obviously it's way more trivial than what Steven just said, but this is the message that comes up in so many streams where it's like, hey, I'm only here for the mustache. Like, obviously they're joking, but when it happens by so many different people on so many different occasions, that doesn't become a trend. You're like, wait, are they joking? Is that all that is noticed about me? I mean,
There's only one way to find out.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong.
Just saying.
Off the bars with you go. Oh, it's not where you were going with that. Okay, sorry.
I mean, so with the limited, so part of what we're getting at with the real deep discourse in this is that we ultimately have a limited amount of time to affect our being on the world, and within those limitations where it's a question mark, we walking through the fog, we don't know where that brick wall is going to be that we run up against and can no longer do stuff when our journey comes to an end. So in terms of productivity and success, while you still have all of that capability, how do we go about identifying what the valuable stuff is to pursue in our careers? And part of what I'm thinking about with this is the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, which at its base is that 80% of results come from 20% of causes. And it just so happens that those would add up to 100%, but that's just incidental. It's a curious little facet of it. So 80% of all of the cool stuff that happens on your stream and in your life comes from 20% of the stuff that you're doing, which means that 80% of the stuff that you're doing is not having those grand effects that are moving you toward your bigger goals, your best impact on the world and on yourself. So there's a lot that goes into this and comes out of this. Like, how are we, I'm going to do this like 80-point question. How are we kind of narrowing the scope and focus of our attention and where our energy should go in order to be successful by our own definition if we're paying attention to only 1/5 of the stuff that we do actually gives us most of the impact in our career? How do we figure out what that stuff is, what that is to focus on and derive goals from and perceive our process through life and through this career?
So
Question mark.
I think this is where this comes back to Dan's fear here. Okay, so it is a completely viable and actually non-laughable comment, right? We joked about the mustache and whatnot, but I think a lot of us drive our lives out of fear that was our existence meaningful, right? Some of us wander through life and don't even care that we existed. They don't appreciate that the chances of you even being born are so astronomically out there that you would need a degree in rocket science for me to explain the math behind it. The fact that you're here is a miracle, right? So you don't want to screw that up. Like, oh, it's Nikes. I'm here. I gotta do something with this, right? But what if it's just me being on a stream with a mustache? Like, oh man, who would want that? But you don't look out from there. You don't see the smaller picture. You don't see that unknown that we were talking about earlier. You don't see that the one time that you talked to somebody on the street and you gave them a friendly face to look at, that they didn't just go and do something horrible to themselves or someone else. You don't see that you changed that person's life. And it's hard because you can't see it, right? So how do you make a goalpost that you can actually see? Well, it's the old philosophy of eating the elephant one bite at a time.
Mm.
So don't look at your life as the grand scheme of things. You know, you want to leave a great legacy. You're 12. That's fantastic. You should shoot for that. At the same time, start realizing you got to grab the fork and you got to start eating the elephant one bite at a time if you're ever going to eat the whole damn thing. And that's where you got to go. The first thing has to be a tangible goal that you can reach, and then your secondary should be a dream, and then your fifth out. You should just keep going out from there. Man, I want to get 5 followers on Twitch. Okay, cool. After that, I want to get 10. After that, 25, 100, 1,000. You should have the larger goals, but have milestones along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you said, like, how do you derive your goals from the 80%? I don't think you're deriving goals. I think you're mapping out your goals and then using that 80% to really focus on what are the main things that will get you there. So to what Steven said, like listing out everything that, like, basically coming up with your main goal, listing everything that you think you need to do to get there, and then narrowing that down to like 3 things that you need to focus on. And from there, you've just listed 80% of the things and you're narrowing it down to 3 things that you're going to focus on. That's going to be 20% of your work right there. And then you see what the output is.
Mm-hmm. There's a really cool exercise you can do at home for any of you listening to us right now. You can do it while we're still up here rambling on and making Loco stream for 12 hours. You can grab a piece of paper or a whiteboard on your computer. Draw one of your biggest dreams on top of the paper. Draw 3 lines coming out from it. What are the 3 big achievements that you would have to do that? For example, getting a Twitch exclusive contract. What do you got to do? Well, you got to get partner. You got to grow a community, and you got to grow a secondary like Twitter or Instagram. Okay, cool. How do you become a partner? Well, I'm going to have to put in 40 hours every other week minimum in order to reach that, because that's what Twitch expects. I'm going to have to, and then you go draw 3 lines from there and go down as far as you can until you stop thinking of things. And then you just start barking at the tree, one thing at a time, nail it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to stop at that halfway point, which is like,
Yep.
They stop at the point at which they're like, okay, I've gone down super far, or relatively, right? But I can't even hit this bottom part, so I guess I just can't do it. It's like, well, no, you keep going, even past the part where you know you can do right now. Maybe you've already put stuff down there that you've already done. Well, then you start to ride the wave back up, and yes, it's gonna be. I mean. There was a Streamer Square Twitter post today where it talked about the things you need in life to be a successful streamer. I don't know if they used the word success, but it was in there. And one of the things that I saw in there was patience. But even patience in making the list of goals is important, rather than patience on getting to said goals. Because yeah, you get to that point. I mean, I know I've done it where I've been like, okay, I'm going to go all the way down to make all these goals to becoming a partner on Twitch. It's like, okay, well, I don't know how to do that right now, so I guess I'm not doing that. Now what? And so I just went back to doing exactly what I was doing before, and it wasn't working. And then I started to like, oh, maybe there's more to what's under that. And yeah, then you start to build up and start to figure out those smaller and smaller and smaller things until it was something that was already achievable right then and there. Sometimes you need easy victories to get the bigger victories.
Yes, absolutely. It provides encouragement too, right? Like motivation and enthusiasm. When you feel like everything that you're doing isn't getting you anywhere, you lose enthusiasm for doing stuff. Like you don't have that joy.
Listen to the word that Hunter just used right there. The motivation. So this is something that philosophers aren't yet really catching on to, and something I've been putting in my videos is motivation behind your goal. Don't just say, I want to be a Twitch exclusive partner. Analyze it. Why do you want to be a Twitch exclusive partner? Analyze every part. Why do I want to be a partner? Why do I want Twitch? Why do I want to be exclusive? Is it monetary? Is it financial? Is it fame? Is it reputation? Is it respect? What is it that you're actually chasing? I hate to break it to every single streamer chasing this right now, but you actually don't give a darn about being a Twitch exclusive partner. You don't. You think you do. You don't. You care about getting fame or fortune or success or reputation or respect. Figure out what it is that you actually want, because Hunter and Loco, probably Dan, can all tell you better than I can because they're better with numbers. Most of the Twitch partners who are partners, I'd say the majority, don't have the concurrence to stay partner if they were to put that as a bar, where you have to keep hitting the same number. You go down in viewers, you go back up, then you go down again, then you go up again. Sometimes you go up real high, then you go real low because you started playing Apex. Like, there's all kinds of weird things, right? And you have to figure out, was it really the numbers you were chasing? Or did you want the shiny purple badge? Probably not. You wanted one of the other things we just listed.
Yeah, that's such a good point because, we see this with people pushing for partnership and they get partner and they realize that their world doesn't change much. And then they're just kind of left feeling deflated or empty. Like, if you understand what it means to be a partner, and this is what it means to you, not just in general, but what it actually means to you to be a partner, when you hit that goal, you're going to feel more fulfilled. And that fulfillment is so important because, like, for any streamer, they will tell you there is no end. There is no point where you will feel satisfied. And this ties into Backward Bloom's question. Like, if you hit all of your goals for Twitch streaming, should you create new goals or be happy with meeting your goals and leave it alone? And I don't think anyone has ever hit a point where they're satisfied. Even people like Ninja and Summit, when they hit 50,000 subs or 100,000 viewers, like, they're never like fully satisfied. There's always another goal for people.
Yeah, I think there's a problem. I want to talk about metrics, and there's like several different ways that we use the term. There's a tendency, and I have been prone to this myself, of having ambiguous, and this is totally on par with pretty much what literally everybody on the panel say. Ambiguous goals of perpetual growth, of like, I always want to be boosting my metrics up. That's what growth looks like for most people in the industry, right? I want to hit bigger viewership metrics. I want to have a larger community. I want to earn more revenue. These measurable things that are also very ambiguous in our minds. That makes them unachievable, where you never get that sense of satisfaction. But I think that there's a really good setup to not continue to move the goalposts for some specific facet, like on-site metrics, but instead shifting your perspective and your prioritization. So I think you can have a point where you could be satisfied with your metrics and not have to focus on growing that anymore. Maybe now you shift your attention into, I want to develop relationships with other people in the industry so that I can eventually transition into other companies. I want to add this other project that I've had bubbling back since I was a teenager into my life, and it would actually fit well with content creation, right? Adding other things in allows you to change what you're focusing on once you hit a level of satisfaction with one set of goals. And I think metrics is an easy one to point to that are usually quite toxic for the mentality of success, because we tend to leave them very ambiguous.
We also treat every metric the same. There is, I mean, so even the same metrics, when you see it like just concurrent viewerships on average, you look at that metric, let's say you only focus on that one for a while, and that may be something that you probably want to do, is focus on one at a time. But if you focus on one metric like that at a time and you say, hey, this is my current metrics, this is my current average viewership, and what changed the stream to stream, what changed in between them, what made those actually get affected, did I change my game? And this is where I kind of saw this and actually saw success, was I changed a game, same time slot, same everything, to a game with a much, much, much smaller community of playership, for several different reasons. It was more complicated to understand. It was, so basically going from, let's say, I think I remember it, going from playing Dauntless 24/7 basically to then playing Factorio for a little bit. And what I saw was about a 20% decrease in average viewership. I saw it as a success because what I expected was about a 50% drop in viewership.
Right.
So, one, I wanted to play the game. I know several members of the community wanted me to play the game. So it was something that I decided to do, even though I knew I was going to see that decrease. But because I saw a decrease of a much smaller scale than expected, it was a win for me, especially because as soon as I switched off that game, a lot of other people that didn't like that came back anyway. So that other average went up. And sometimes you see stuff where you'll play an extremely popular game and your average goes up tremendously, but sometimes you don't see that as a success because you're like, well, most of these people probably weren't going to stick around. They were just
Probably here for that game.
Right, exactly. So every statistic within every stream needs to be thought about at least a little bit differently.
The real thing at the end of the day is you have to understand that success is fleeting, and that's why we constantly talk about moving goalposts. So we touched on earlier about how moments define you and then they will again. You have to think of it, because apparently I love metaphors, you have to think of life as a mountain, okay? Whenever you're at the base of the mountain, you're looking up and you're like, that mountain, holy crap, that is tall. And you start climbing it and you're throwing your shoe in there and you're screaming down at Hunter for making you climb in the first place. But you're climbing it, right? And you're getting up top, and then you finally hit the top. Affiliate, I did it. I got up here. And you dust yourself off, and you're like, I did it. I'm here. And you look up and you go, crap. There's another mountain that's even taller above you. Yeah, and so it's not actually the whole mountain that you're seeing at any one time. And I'm telling you, I don't have ninja numbers. I'm not Dr. Lupo. I have my flags on the ground I can say are a success. And sure, if you're at the point where you're getting invited to a show like this, you're getting because you've reached certain milestones of success, right? So that in and of itself,
successful.
It is. Yep. So and I think that's worth mentioning. Like Hunter and Local have made an amazing place. Dan has come through and made an amazing philosophical place, and that's why this place has an audience now. That's why all of you are watching us, right? But as soon as you get that invite, you're like, yeah, I did it. And then you do the thing. And then after the show goes over, that's it.
Pass.
On to the next thing. And I can tell you, I've been on the stage, I've been under the lights, I've been on the Game Awards, and it's great for a minute and a half. It feels amazing, and then it's over. And all of you can think into your own lives of some moment that you were like, man, this is amazing, but really think about it hard. How long did that feeling last? Did it last a long, long time? Probably not.
Well, how many people put so much pressure on themselves to ride a wave of just momentum, right?
Oh yeah.
I did this
Especially
thing.
Here.
Now I have to go do a million other things before this momentum dies off. It's just,
I think with streaming in particular, very momentum based.
Yeah. And you're constantly afraid of losing it, right? That's part of that drive.
I want to say that I really, really despise what Twitch did with the whole path to partner thing. I really have a problem with it philosophically because it made a market for what a partner is, right? It made a market for what we want to see in a partner, which turned legitimately and literally into analytics, right? It turned into how many average viewers do you have? And that's it pretty much, right? You have to have a certain amount of followers, stuff like that. That like makes sense on a business side, but I didn't become a partner because of my analytics. I became a partner because I added to the industry in ways that did not show up on camera. And I've had conversations with the people who eventually did partner me at Twitch, and they said, we don't want you to have to wait until your numbers get to this point. We actually value you for what you're doing, and thus that's how we're going to give you partnership. Now, it's much more than that. There's so many there's so many reasons, and it still is kind of that way, but they put this threshold there for whatever reason that they wanted to do. It makes sense on their end. What they didn't understand, I think, is how it makes sense to anybody trying to strive for that goal, because all they see are the things on their dashboard. So it automatically defines to them, without having the one-on-one conversation between somebody at that company itself, what it means past or around that.
Here's the problem, in my opinion, is that we have collectively turned metrics into goals.
Yep.
And this is the thing that I harp on with some regularity, is that metrics are literally, by definition, measurements.
Mm-hmm.
Measuring a thing can't be a goal. Like just measuring the thing, that doesn't provide any useful information. What's the context for this? Like, what does the thing that you're measuring itself achieve? Why are you measuring it in the
2 centimeters?
First place? Yeah, exactly. Like, that's just like 3 grams of flax. What are you gonna do with that? It's useless information. So it's like, if you have something that it's intended to fulfill, the metrics are supposed to help you figure out whether or not you're achieving something else. Metrics are the finger that points at the thing of like, yes, I am or am not getting closer to what this other goal is. I think it's such a fascinating thing that we have instead turned it into the things that Book is always a good guess. The things that we're using to measure stuff somehow have infiltrated our psyche to become the goals themselves. But 8,000 viewers doesn't do anything by itself. It doesn't create revenue. It doesn't create a community. It doesn't make you happier unless the only purpose you have set out for yourself is to hit 8,000 viewers. Then you're happy until they dissipate, and then you're not anymore. Because this is kind of the fleeting nature of the thing. Metrics are.
I've had 8,000 viewers before. I really don't know what happened to get that. I don't know what it accomplished. I'm going to say it probably accomplished nothing other than maybe a slight boost in I get more eyeballs on me. But I still had to. It didn't matter. You're probably going to get the same percentage out of just having your normal stream with your normal numbers and doing your normal work. Because if you're focused on what you're doing at any given time, it matters on what's going to find you in that time and space.
Yeah, I wish people would realize that the path of success that Twitch has carved out is the one that is accessible to everyone, in that they can measure certain statistics like concurrent viewers, and it is a path that you can chase, but you can make it out to be your goal to do something different, as we were saying earlier, do something that's not already being done and get noticed for it. That's actually how you get sponsors to sponsor you. That's how you get partner. That's how you get the blue check mark, the purple check mark. You stand out from everyone else. Even going into an area I don't like to go into too much, because it feels to me, even though I know it's not, it feels like I'm bragging. But things like I have a screenshot of selling more of my one crappy book than George R.R. Martin had selling his Game of Thrones. For one day, for one moment in time, my book was selling more on Amazon. Does that mean anything? Do you know my name like a household name? No, you don't. But I have that screenshot. So I hit that.
I say your name all the time. Your household name over here.
Your cats are on my viewership list. I appreciate that. I've never had 8,000 viewers in my channel. But there have been times where I've seen my channel pull in more gift subscriptions than Dr. Lupo does in a day. And so it just depends.
Another thing that spawned out of this too is, think about viral tweets. This is one that always stands out to me, is when you see some tweet that has 265K faves on it, and you click on the person's profile and they have 263 followers or whatever, 18 followers, right? You get some arbitrary number. That may stand out in their minds as some big achievement. But, 10 years from now, are you really going to be at a party bragging about that one time in 2020 that you had 165K tweet?
Heck yeah.
Or whatever? You're right. It's like that ends up being, because that didn't do anything other than catch your attention. That was a blip on the radar. Like, that was neat. That was interesting. Maybe you can do something with that. Like, by itself, achieves nothing at all.
Right.
It doesn't.
Well, I feel like,
Almost everybody at once.
I know. Everyone's got ideas. Well, I just
go. No, I was just gonna brag. That's it.
I feel like, for content creators, the reason why this conflation happens is because we are surrounded by numbers and we are judged by numbers, like with our viewership, follower count on Twitter, YouTube, how many subs you have, how many followers on Twitter do you have, as much as we want to preach, like, the numbers don't matter, and they shouldn't for the most part, they do. that people make judgments based on those. Like hitting 10,000 Twitter followers will open up new doors. People who have known you will start to follow you now that you have a K next to your follower account. It's silly.
That's true.
But I think that's why people are like, when you think about goals and determining goals, you're like, I want 15,000 Twitter followers. Like I want to hit 100,000 Twitch followers, because like that's, people get tied their metrics so heavily into their success.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so many different values on it too. I mean, we've talked about this when I went back when Prima Games existed. Like every author there, if the New York Times considered video games a viable piece of authorship, all of us would have been New York Times bestsellers because of how many copies of our books were sold. But it's like, even if that were to come out, the people buying those books, it's probably the reason that they didn't count it, but the people buying those books, they didn't look at who the author was. They're just like, I like The Legend of Zelda, and this is a pretty book. I'm going to buy this book and help me through this video game. It's like, okay.
I think it's worth mentioning as well. You'll hear from people who are up the mountain further not to think it's amazing up here, because we want to sort of remind people that it shouldn't be looked at in that same light. But at the same time, as Loco said, it is important. You do want the verified. So you do want the things that are going to open doors, and you want to hear how you're going to get there. And the best piece of advice that I can give people is to understand that pushing a boulder on a level flat, the hardest part is getting the boulder rolling. What is it with me and metaphors today? The hardest part is getting it. I know. The hardest part is getting it rolling. I can tell you from my own metrics, I'm sure everyone here could as well. Getting that first 3 followers is the hardest part, and then it's easier to get another one. When I remember years where I was happy when a tweet got 3 likes, and now if it gets 150, I'm like, man, what did I screw up here? I should have. Yeah, damn it.
I know.
So and you get more followers, you get more everything. The more, it's a snowball. So understand, if you're struggling now, it does get easier because the ball starts to get momentum.
People will just follow you because you have a lot of followers at some point, right?
Yes,
They're like,
exactly.
oh, this person must be important. They have, 100,000 followers. All right.
Yeah.
Or the check
Say
mark.
one
Just
tweet.
It becomes a bit of a groupthink thing.
Yeah.
So I have to take a personal bathroom break, but I want to leave y'all. I've just 20 minutes left, and I really wanted to hold it. I've been trying.
Grab the bottle.
No, go.
The thing that I want to bring up now is, after the metrics conversation, is intrinsic versus extrinsic values, I guess, and goals and definitions of success. So the intrinsic ones are the ones that we create internally, and the extrinsic ones are things that are handed to us. Somebody else tells us what success looks like, and then we internalize this and it becomes our own, but it's not, we didn't originate that idea of success, right? It was handed from the outside, extrinsic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious what y'all think about what an individual inputs into their productivity versus how other people respond to it, and how we should use that for judgments of success. Like, if I have some incredible project, I can list out for myself everything that it would take to see it to fruition. And that seeing it to fruition is a success. Now, maybe it's a big flop and nobody cares about it. Should I consider that successful or unsuccessful? I'll take my answer off the air.
First time caller, long time listener.
No, that's a great question, and it's something that Steven actually mentioned at the beginning of the show, and it's been in my mind the whole time. So I'm actually glad we came back to it, because as creators, our success is so tied to the public perception, the public reaction, your viewership, right? Like the engagement you get. How do you feel successful on a project if you worked so hard and you completed it, but then it didn't do so well. Like, let's say you made a big stream event, like for a game launch, and your viewership was low, but maybe people really enjoyed it. Like your community that was there really loved it. How do you determine if that was successful? Because I've definitely had this exact problem with like planning game launch events. Like, what do you guys think about that?
It's tough. I mean, but we have to, I think understanding it's tough is a big piece. So back to the snowball metaphor, sometimes we have to understand that we're rolling this snowball, but it's also in the middle of summer where it would be different.
Mood.
But like you may be working very hard and just as hard as you would be in the winter to roll this snowball, but in the winter it builds up quicker, even though you're doing the same exact work. You're doing the same exact work. Maybe it's January and people aren't doing certain things, and maybe people are taking time off, and that means that viewers are taking time away from Twitch or whatever it might be. That might be considered the summer for this snowball. And so you have to think about how difficult it is at certain times for certain things that you may have put together that launch, and the numbers may have been very low, but the people who were there very much enjoyed that. It's important to again live in that moment of the people that were here. It's 50% of my average viewership really liked it. So do you consider that a success on your own? Do you not? I mean, I think that's completely up to you. I would consider it a success because it worked, at least in a way that said people who were there enjoyed it. Working in comedy clubs for most of my college life, seeing some of the best shows I've ever seen with 5 people in the audience was amazing. And it's like, I will always remember those shows because they were just that good. But those numbers, again, it's that measurement. You have to decide what they mean to you.
So I kind of have 2 different thoughts here, and they kind of go in 2 different ways. One, I agree with everything that Dan just said. So just pretend like I said all that. And I feel like you have to pay attention to your environment and know that pushing a boulder up a hill versus pushing it on a flat ground versus pushing it on a downslope are 3 very different things. But if in the end all that matters is how far the boulder got, that's all people will remember you for. That kind of sucks. That's society. We're not going to change that. That's I mean, we're not, Hunter. Sorry, we're not. Not in our lifetimes.
Listen.
I mean, we can do some things to kind of change people's minds, but at the end of the day, it's a very in-ground belief into our society. I mean, take for example, Tim the Tatman got more subscribers when he got a Fall Guys crown, than I will get this next 3 years in one day, in 1 hour, maybe in 10 minutes. But I struggled for 6 days to get a crown, and all I can use to do it is a mouse. Literally, that's all I've got, and a hat that I wear. And there was no huge fanfare. There was, 5 gifted subs, and everyone was like, "Hey, good job." Like, I don't get the fanfare. Arguably, it was 50,000 more difficult for me to get that done than Tim the Tatman. Now, I'm not saying I'm as entertaining. I'm not saying I'm as enjoyable to watch. I'm taking all that out of the equation. Just dollar for dollar, the amount of effort we put into it, I put in more effort. I get less reward. Okay, cool. That's just the way society is. But that kind of leads me to my second point, which is I challenge everyone who's watching, and even my fellow co-hosts here, to come up with goals that everyone else thinks are silly. Come up with things that you want to do for you, and for no one else. I did an interview recently with someone who has been on my radar wanting to do an interview with them forever. They asked me to do an interview. I was thrilled. I remember looking up to them as one of the highest profile disabled people I knew on the internet from the guild. And she has 450 followers. I have 56,000. I am, by Twitter metrics, so much bigger now. Why did that mean something to me? What? Well, and nobody cared that I was happy about this because they were like, "That's cool, Steve. Good for you." But it meant a lot to me. It meant something that an idol of mine, asked me to do it. It meant to me that friendship I was able to make was a goal that I had set years ago, and I finally hit it. So I encourage y'all to figure something out, write it down, And then when you hit it, celebrate it, even if nobody else does.
Absolutely. You know, something that came to mind for me in the conversation, somewhere between Dan and Steve, was a metaphor by example. This is kind of a rare one, so I'm going to seize this. In my art career, the pieces that I made that I thought were the absolute best never sold. Nobody cared about them. You know, even putting them up, people would just like walk on by like, oh, that's just wallpaper. And then go look at what I thought was a terrible one, but the curator decided should go up on the wall. That's the thing that everybody's interested in. And like, if it were a bidding war, if I didn't have a price tag on it, it would just be like this. Like, people were just infatuated with what I thought was my terrible work. Now, on the surface, I think that can lead to a lot of disappointment. But reshaping that to find the value and joy in that experience is that I get to keep my favorite works on my own wall because nobody else wants them. I get them. And that makes it so much better than having to part with my favorite pieces for a price tag and be like, okay, sure, I got $3,000, but I'll never get to see that thing again. And it was so good. And I feel like some of the goal stuff and our progression can work in a similar way with a perspective shift, looking at the joys and the delights of what we've created instead of how it was responded to, and then making it less about metrics and more about what we actually did, not how it was received, not what we got out of it, but what was the quality of the stuff that I just did. Is that great? Did that fit my goals? Did that surpass them? That, I think, is a really great metric for success, is those inputs, what it is that I'm doing, and then trying to figure out how to structure goals around defining my inputs into my work and into my career. And then those can be successful regardless of how they're received, and then I've got to win.
So we've been doing really good at going round robin and everybody getting a voice and nobody stepping on each other. And I'm going to just kill that right now to jump back in, because I would love to say, I'd love to say, I talk about changing society and changing what you can do. All of us are streamers. Everyone here is an aspiring streamer, presumably, or else someone who thinks that one of us has a great facial hair. Not mentioning names, okay? Look up. But all of us, I would love to challenge each and every one of you to stop talking down and badly about yourself. I absolutely despise the small streamer hashtag. I despise when people crap on themselves. I do it all the time, self-deprecating humor. I love doing it, Conan O'Brien style. It's part of my signature, and that's okay. If you're self-deprecating humor, sure, that's fine. Punch down at yourself. But remember that has some consequences to it. And I'm telling you, as someone sitting here in front of you, pretend we're talking one-on-one, I have literally had famous people say to me, hey, do you want to do this show? It'd be really cool to have you. And I've been, nah, I'm too small. I can't compete with your other famous people. And I declined. And they go, okay, well, maybe some other day. And then I've regretted it and gone back and I'm like, hey, I was having a bad day. Like, I'll do it. That'd be cool. They'll be like, oh, cool, definitely. We'll slot you in sometime. It never happens because because I turned it down, and that's on me. And you have to remember that you can sabotage yourself real easy, and you have to stop doing it.
I do.
Yeah.
That's one of my greatest achievements is how well I sabotage myself. It's a grand success.
I think people do that in relationships a lot too. Just
never heard of it.
I don't deserve somebody like this.
Yeah, right.
Like, well, but they have their own mental capacity to choose what they want, right? So why can't you trust that? Just trust that they are,
right,
with
like
you, or at least hanging out with you.
Circumstance, yeah.
Right.
Like
they're
doing something
they're
whether
choosing
you're good.
to do. I mean, I very much I am one of my goals for a long time was to be invited to things like this without having to like kind of put my oh there's an attention laser out there, I have to put myself in front of it, get down Mr. President. And so like not having to do that for certain things and then be asked, hey, do you want to do this, like that's a goal. That's a goal achieved for sure. Because like that's part of what I like to do is be a voice for something and voice for a group of people or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's the confusing timeline people that they want to be part of, but I'm okay with that. It's fun for me.
Yeah, I recently did that as soon as I won't give a specified time period to save myself embarrassment, but recently we'll go with that. When I was confessing to someone that I had more than friendship feelings towards them, and I knew the problems in my brain, and instead of being like, "Hey, how do you feel about me?" I was like, "So listen, there's a bunch of problems, and A, B, C, D.
Oh no.
You can guess the outcome of this." As Loco's like, "Yep, he shot that shot bad." So so I shot my shot, and it, as you could expect, landed on Moon, some planet 3 systems over. And it's one of it may not be particularly because I did it that way, but I'm sure that didn't help. So
it didn't help at all.
Yeah, it did not. It did not do. Yeah.
I need to call in an airstrike. Danger close. Okay, how danger close? On my location.
So, unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap up here, but I want to send off the show with just one last piece of advice that you would want to give to someone who is aspiring to start streaming, aspiring to become a full-time streamer or partner. What is one last takeaway from today's show?
Yep, and then we'll do the second half of the show 5 minutes from now.
The second eighth of the show, you mean?
Yeah.
I have something. And people ask me this a lot of the time because they slot us into the front page thing. So there's a lot of people that come by who are new to Twitch and what have you. And I tend to give a version of this piece of advice every time, which is you just got to start doing it. And if you are already doing it, try to enjoy what you do. Obviously, it's a very cliche thing to say. If you don't enjoy it, nobody else will. But it is the truth. Also, if you don't enjoy it, you're gonna stop doing it. And the more and more you put that mentality into your brain without even really knowing it, it'll even if you continue doing it because you're stubborn like I am, you will do it in a way that you're not happy with. So do it, have fun with it, enjoy what you do, and everything will sort of come. That's also a cliche, but it is sort of true. You just have to make sure that you're paying attention to those things that do come your way, not just just let it happen, let it flow in. Do those. When you start paying attention to it, you start to do that flow chart and start to actually like develop what it is that makes these pieces together. They don't just throw a bag full of Legos into a box of Lego. They usually split it up into categories or at least modules, right? You want to build one thing at a time, so do one thing at a time, and eventually you'll have a big Millennium Falcon that it's very easily broken if you drop it, but it is nice to look at for a while.
So they don't make the rules. I'm gonna give a bunch of advice. So number one, there is never a right time. Stop thinking that there's a right time because it'll never happen. There'll always be a next pandemic, trash fire, social justice thing. They'll never stop. Just do what you want to do. Be mindful of the current climate. There are bad times to start something, but there's never a horrible time. So, maybe it's a little bit harder for you. Understand the difference between doing something because you're happy or because you want to. Understand that sometimes you have regrets about good decisions. Understand that sometimes in order to make yourself happy, you have to make yourself sad for a while. The smartest thing that you can ever do in streaming is to pick one game and play only that game and develop that community and get a bunch of people that will stick with you, and 45% of them will stay with you when you move somewhere else, and you'll lose more than half. That is the smartest way you can do it. It's also the fastest way to burn out and the fastest way to make yourself hate yourself for choosing to stream. It is the smartest path, but it's the most dangerous and horrible. And the final advice I would give you is figure out if you want friendship, fame, or fortune out of streaming. You can have it all, but you cannot have it all in the same portions. Figure out what's the most important, target that one. If you want a community, cool. Treat your people one-on-one and perform individually. Talk to them one-on-one like I do, like Dan does. Okay, if you want to have a show If you want to have be community driven and you want to be super famous like Loco, start up 17 different shows, and then that's how you get known in the industry. That's why everybody knows Loco. If you want to have that community based talk, you go for a hunter and you go to, because he talks to everybody the same. That's different kinds of people, right? So decide what your flavor is and stick with it and just be true to yourself. Because at the end of the day, as soon as you're fake, people will figure it out and they'll leave you because you're being a fake ass.
And nobody else can tell you who you are. That's your own work to do. So I think my big one is being proactive versus being reactive. And this goes into goals and metrics and all of this stuff. If your responses are reactive, then you're mostly doing stuff in the hopes that it will be positively received. And then when it's not, your reaction is still defining for your concept of the thing that you did, right? If you are proactive instead of reactive, you drive the feelings that you have toward events because you're the one determining what success even looks like for them. And this is what allows you to find joy in every day, which I think is crucial, incredibly valuable, seeing all of your little wins because you're defining what the wins look like instead of letting the outside world tell you how to feel about the stuff that you're doing. We all know the outside world is largely full of idiots. I can't trust them to tell me whether or not the thing that I did is worthwhile. I could definitely trust them to tell me whether or not they like it.
Yeah,
But that
I was
can
gonna
determine
say
whether or not I actually did something valuable.
Yeah, very well said. So let's do some shout outs to close out the show. And if you guys enjoyed this discussion, Danotage is going to be continuing this exact topic tomorrow on his show. So make sure to follow the Streamer Square Twitch channel and come back tomorrow. And, Danotage will keep this discussion up. So let's do some shout outs. You know what, Dan, starting with you, since you're on the far right over here, what are you up to? Who are you? What are you doing?
Who am I? I'm one of the hosts here on Streamer Square. Every Tuesday at 3 p.m. right now. Keep join the Discord, Streamer Square Discord, to find out when those things change. 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Go head on over there. There's hardly ever a plan for the show. It's called Dan's Stream of Thought because it's usually things that just flow out of my brain. But I have already written stuff down in so I did it. I was like, I'm gonna prep for this show, and then whatever I don't use and talk about here, I will roll over into tomorrow's show.
There you go. This is your homework.
But, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I do often give homework, by the way.
That's true.
In Dan's Stream of Thought. But I stream here on Twitch and put YouTube videos up on YouTube. Everything is Danotage. No matter where you go, you'll find me there. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Steven, what about you?
So my name is Steve. Hello. I like Kit Kats, kittens, and long rolls on the beach. You can find me just about everywhere under Steven Spohn, Steven Spohn Official, the scrolling text beside my face. I am essentially someone who is trying to make the world a better place by offering a different perspective than the average Joe. People with disabilities are often overlooked and undersold, and I'm trying to sort of blaze some paths to make that easier for the people to come after me because I never saw someone like me when I was growing up. So I'm out there trying to be that representation. Reluctantly, I didn't want to do this at first, but then people like Hunter and Loco came along and told me, get the hell in the spotlight, so I'm doing it. My main points right now are on Twitch. You can find me on all the things they have below the screen. I do 5 days a week, Wednesday through Sunday. I'm usually playing games or, yelling about obscenities on Twitch. On Twitter, I'm usually waxing poetically, arguing with Hunter, that kind of thing. And on YouTube, I'm doing all of my philosophical sort of make yourself a better person on YouTube. Talking about goals and things for yourself. I'm doing that for me. It's not about gaming, as you can imagine. It's not super popular because I'm mostly known for games. I'm not known for philosophy yet, but I'm doing it because I want to. And there's been people who have been helped. And if there's parting advice / shout out I can give, it's go check out the YouTube and see if one of those could help you be a better version of yourself.
And I think that's
Awesome.
what success looks like. You're doing it because you want to, not because it's already popular. Proactive, not reactive.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I like this.
Hunter, what about you? What are you up to?
You want me to help you there, Loco? The amazing, infinitely wisdom-filled, superhuman, nice hat-having, orange shirt, amazing logo, look behind him, best you've ever seen in the face of the entire planet, human being that extraordinarily is the best textbook example of anything you've ever seen on this channel, Hunter the Wild.
I don't think anything
Thank you
will
so
ever
much,
top
Loco.
that.
Perfect. I mean, now I have been okay. Yes, that's me. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing that stuff right now. What about you, Loco?
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna go with that. I'm on Twitter, and I am gonna be on Twitch, back on Twitch, soon. TM. You can find me at twitch.tv/LOWCO, or Twitter is Loco2525, and here every single Monday and behind the scenes working on Streamer Square. So if you guys enjoy this, make sure to tell another streamer out there that needs some help. Send them our way. We will help them. And just make sure to hit the follow button on here on Twitch and YouTube and Twitter. We are Streamer Square everywhere, so make sure to check us out.
Tell a friend. We love new
yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
If you know somebody else, if somebody else has come up to you and they're like, I'm really struggling with my stream, I don't know what to do, can you give me some advice? We would love to help. It's literally our purpose.
So yeah, other than that, that is gonna do it for today. There is Know Your Brand, Your Business. Our next shows will be tomorrow. We've got Behind the Streams and Dan's Stream of Thoughts tomorrow on twitch.tv/streamersquare. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on the stream scene.
Bye, friends.